You're listening to Inclusive AF with Jackye Clayton and Katee Van Horn.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Inclusive AF podcast, where we explore the intersections of diversity, equity, inclusion, and how they shape our workplaces and communities. I'm Jackye Clayton.
And I'm Katee Van Horn, the queen of all the things today.
All of them.
I just decided to give myself that title. So today we're going to talk about the recent actions by the current administration targeting DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Particularly, they're going after law firms and what that means in regards to kind of what the current is, but also the future implications for DEI practitioners, DEI initiatives across all industries, all sectors.
It's been a turbulent time for DEI professionals. I mean, and people are trying to figure all this out as we have been in implementing. But if you look more recently, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC, under this administrative directive, initiated investigations into 20 prominent law firms regarding their DEI practices. This move, it stems from concerns that certain diversity initiatives might violate Title VII by making employment decisions based on race or sex.
So, Jackye, I think the administration's stance is that promoting diversity is essential. It shouldn't lead to reverse discrimination, or that's what they're saying is happening. And the EEOC released informal guidance indicating that DEI-related employment decisions can violate Title VII, even if only partially based on protected characteristics like race or sex. So the EEC is saying, yep, this could be a violation of Title VII if you're only making decisions based on race or sex.
And to be clear, as we've worked through this, dealing with organizations, lawyers has been a regular thing for DEI, of looking at this before this administration, as we go through, and that we, in most instances have been able to share this is a fair hiring practice. But now from the legal community that's already, nervous about those things, we have DLA Piper, which is one of the world's largest law firms, disbanding their minority employee groups that because of fear, although they weren't among the 20 firms to be initially investigated. The move really reflects how they're going to approach with these new directives. And instead of researching and digging into it, they're just like, okay, we're going to disband everything. And it makes me frustrated because I want to see, when we see a lack of inclusion at these places, who's going to step up and say something.
Right. I think that's the whole thing, is it's this, hey, we're going to raise concerns, or, we're going to say, what are we doing with these DEI initiatives? But you have a lot of different law firms, and they are removing now references to what partners have been involved with in regards to investigations. And, they're trying to basically get rid of any attention or any highlight being placed on them. And that really creates a whole level of uncertainty of okay, so if we're in, you might say the word promoting DEI is a very interesting term, because it is one of those things that they don't want to face any legal challenges. They don't want anyone coming after him, but based on maybe cases that they've taken in the past, or positions that they have supported, that they now could be put under a microscope, which is just, again, it's scary.
It's scary, but it's fair, right? We should be looking at that, because maybe if people dug in, then they actually would understand the number one group that gets benefit from DEIB at this point is white women. And the number two is white men, looking at some of the way that DEIB initiatives go across. But I digress, I don't know who you're trying to help or hurt. I don't know why you think you're being discriminatory and that somebody just gets those hires, but it makes me mad because it's such great work. But you look beyond the legal sector and you look at other agencies, And, things like that are being passed to people who don't have this expertise. It was the Department of Education under Linda McMahon, which, again, another story for another day, but they said they're going to transfer responsibilities like student loans to the Small Business Administration and special education to the Department of Health and Human Services. So it really goes along that agenda that, Trump, again, didn't know anything about, to look at this broader agenda to reduce federal oversight to promote state control. But I will keep saying over and over and over again, if the state control worked, we wouldn't see so many discrepancies amongst all the states. Like if they had their best part of action, show me the one that doesn't try to benefit themselves.
And I would also say, again, thinking about the infrastructure of the United States, a lot of times when they're saying we want the states to have control, it's also what they're really saying is we don't want to have to pay any type of money from the federal government
Yeah.
to manage these programs or to help manage and mitigate some of the risks that come up. We want to keep it at the state level so that, I mean, like education is a great example where if they're, dismantling the Department of Education, no longer giving federal funding for state, for schools, then the states have to come up with money themselves. And in very poor states, that's not going to work, or very, poor cities, whatever it might be. And
Right.
I think that's the biggest piece. But, I think the part that scares me is also, when we talk about education, if we have reduced federal insight, there's that what is a prioritization of diversity and inclusion. And so you're also going to have major disparities between educational opportunities, resources, et cetera. Just like I said, those states that have less funding, or, in the state of Arizona, I'm sure you can think about in the state of Texas, you have certain cities that have more money versus other cities that maybe are not as, the taxes are less or whatever it might be. So they don't have the tax on a state level to support some of the education systems. And guess what? Guess who those groups normally are? They are the people that have been historically disadvantaged, historically underrepresented, historically just given the worst possible situation. So, I think when we talk about resourcing, that's a major implication when we talk about diversity and inclusion and, putting things at the state level.
Right. It's-
I don't know about you, but I don't know very many people that are hopeful about the world of work. And I'd like to change that. My name's Marcus Mossberger, and I started the Hope at Work podcast, where you'll find two things. Number one, really interesting guests. And number two, innovative ideas about the future of work. Check it out.
People literally thought they weren't going to be hurt by this. I'm not just trying to be right, even though we were right. And I'm not trying to say just, I told you so, even though we did tell you so. Because who is being affected by this when you dismantle this, like Katie said, and you get the education? Okay, we're not going to have any federal funding. So then who does it fall to? It falls to everyone. It falls to the American taxpayer. Unless you're in that top percentage, you'll benefit. Like you look at what happens when you no longer can give free lunches. You don't have USAID. Like those things that those help farmers to be able to subsidize those foods and vegetables that come to like use for school lunches. And like you said, like I'm in Texas and it's one of the more wealthier places. It still has its challenges and it has been like underfunding education forever. But you like some of these places gonna fall straight off. Like
Right.
they're just gonna like they're just not gonna educate anybody. I don't know what they're gonna do with the people.
Right. But that's also where like all of these different initiatives around education come into play, where it's school vouchers or this type of
Right.
privatization of schooling. And sure, that works in wealthy neighborhoods, but it doesn't work for those Title IX schools and schools that are, again, historically underfunded. But the good news, I will say, kind of going back to the law firms,
Right.
is that, these law firms are taking a stand and they're basically saying, we're not negotiating with the White House regarding our clients or our legal actions. So Mark Elias, chair of the Elias Law Group, he basically said, we're not negotiating. This is something that, we're going to uphold the rule of law, and we're going to resist intimidation, and we're going to emphasize the importance of those two things. But we're also not going to say yes to whatever legal actions or whatever clients they should or shouldn't take on, which I get, that just makes me happy that that resistance is happening. And so kudos to Mark Elias with the Elias Law Group. And
Yeah, but I'm sorry to be like Debbie Downer, but it also highlights like this tension between the government and organizational autonomy in promoting DEI. I mean, and this is crazy talk. Like, this is not like we're trying to look at less government overreach while creating more government overreach doesn't make any sense. And so, because there's this tension between, the government and these private organizations, like you have to like navigate these challenges carefully. Like you have to look at compliance with federal directives, but you have to stay true to your commitment for diversity and inclusion.
100%. And I think that's absolutely where the DEI professionals that are currently doing this work, they have to reassess how they approach diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that you're advocating for diverse perspectives, making sure you're advocating for voices to be heard. That is going to be a very tight rope that DEI practitioners are walking, because you do have to go, how do we make sure this is still legal, but
Right.
also make sure that we're doing what's right from a human rights, civil rights, all of these things. I won't even say civil rights, since those are getting thrown out the window. Human rights is what I'll
Right.
say. And so it's how do we navigate this?
I really look at this and I wonder the same thing, because I don't know how people can do their best work of stepping up to this when we can be when so many people are afraid. Like we've talked for years about psychological safety, and especially in the before times when we started making the shift to try to make people feel better at work and doing things, realize that your employees are not okay. Like there are people at your offices that are not okay. And it's going to be key that you have that open communication, that you provide resources and things outside of just the hiring piece to make sure that the people that you do have, that you can build that inclusive culture, to make sure that you can mitigate some of those negative effects, because these impacts and policy changes are hurting your people. And it's hard to do your best work when you are terrified. And some of these people feel like they're selling their soul in order to do what you're having to be compliant. How far are you willing to go? And how do we advocate? Like you were just saying.
Yeah, and I think there are some pieces here that, I joked when I was doing that work full time that doing DEI work in Arizona was very different than doing DEI work in California.
For
And I
sure.
think that's still the case in some places, where what you might be able to push the envelope on in certain places won't work in other places. And I think that goes to industries, that goes to locations, etc. But I think that the biggest piece is staying informed. And I know we talk about this in every episode now, of just go and do your research, understanding what's going on, and then also like being adaptable, being able to say, what should we do here? Could we make a change? Could we shift this a little bit so that still is within the letter of the law? But I think that's also where you have to engage with legal experts. You have to think about your professional networks and how you share information. I know there are so many good conferences, so many good places that people are sharing what should we do in this changing climate, in this changing situation. And, I think any way, and this podcast being one of those things to do, any way that you can listen and learn, and then also share what you've learned with other folks in this DEI space, to say, how do we navigate this evolving landscape? How do we navigate what's going on? How do we make sure that we're doing the right things, again, by our people that are scared to death right now? And then also, how do we make sure that we do a CYA for the organization as well, so they aren't put under a microscope? So again, I'm just going to go with, it's a tightrope. It's a balancing act that DEI professionals have to walk right now.
And when you're talking to these legal experts or people compliance experts, make sure you're talking to real experts that do this work, like not everybody that just has a law degree, because this is not like the fact of the matter is, and Katee, tell me if you think this is wrong. Most corporate counsels will just tell you to stop doing it. Like whatever it is, they don't want, because they know that it's going to cause a case and it's going to cost the organization, and it puts pressure on them to protect the organization. Our legal counsel at work, sure, they might care about DEI work, but you really want to have people that are engaged, that they're protecting the organization, the employees at organizations, not just people that are just protecting the company, not the employees there.
Absolutely. And I think we mentioned or had Michael Paciello on a few weeks ago. Go back and listen to that recording, because I think that's another great space where we were able to have an open conversation about how his firm is approaching it, what they're thinking about. And so, if you have not heard that episode, please go back and listen to it. I think it's just, this is a time when we all need to be coming together and learning from each other as much as we can, but also don't sell your soul to the devil. Like, if you start to feel like you're going down that path, or feeling like you are being asked to go down that path, reach out to Jackye, reach out to me, reach out to people in this community. We have ideas, we have places for you to learn and to grow and to think about this differently, so that we can continue this work in the right way.
I think, yes, I appreciate that. And one of the things that we talked about lightly that's so important is not to surrender before you even get in the fight.
Right.
Like, that's what I see a lot of lawyers doing. Like, they just punt all of it. And
Yeah.
then the people that are there don't know what to do.
Right. But that is the easiest answer, is just stop doing it. So I get why lawyers are saying that. That's the easiest answer. It's not the right answer, but it's the easiest answer, and the least amount of friction from a go forward plan. And again, I know why attorneys would say that. Of course, they're like, hey, let's just stay out of any lawsuits, stay out of the spotlight in this regard, all of these things. Yes, you have a cute tail.
It's why our moms used to say there's nothing good happening after midnight. It was just easier. I'm laughing at Penny's face, but you can just see Penny.
Coming for a little visit here.
Yes.
So in love with me, huh? All right. Well, hey, Jackye.
Yo.
Glad we were able to unpack this. And glad folks, if you are interested, and like these conversations, please remember to subscribe and stay tuned for our next episode. We're going to continue to unpack some of these ever evolving topics, and highlighting things that are not just making us nervous, but we want other people to be aware of. And if there's something that you're like, hey, you all need to talk about this, please tell us. We want to hear about it. We want to get other people involved in this conversation. So thank you so much for joining. This is Katee Van Horn.
And this is Jackye Clayton.
Bye.